Welcome back to the channel. My name's Mitch, and this is ChampMind Studios, where we break down the mindset and habits from some of the most successful people in the world. We figure out what makes them great from a psychological perspective, and we apply some of those skills into our own lives, into our own goals, as we look to unleash greatness. And we also break down UFC fights on this channel, and we've got a fight card coming up this Saturday night from the UFC Apex in Las Vegas, Nevada. UFC Vegas 85, featuring a main event between top middleweights Roman Dolidze and Nassourdine Imavov. I can't even talk today, guys. It has been a long week, but I'm going to break down the entire card from top to bottom. I'm going to give you my picks, my analysis, and I'm also going to give you something different to think about as you're building your bets, as you're building your parlays. I'm going to talk about things like mindset, psychology, and some of the mental factors that some of these athletes might be going through that could potentially play a factor in the result of their matchups and the result of their fights. But before I dive into that, guys, I want to give a quick shout out to the newest official partner of ChampMind Studios, Silverback Steel Supplements. Guys, I've been lifting weights for over a decade, and I have tried pretty much every supplement known to man. And I'm not BSing you. I'm not just saying this because, they're partnering with the show, they're partnering with the YouTube channel. I wouldn't put my name behind something if I didn't genuinely believe in the product. And I needed to try the product first before I agreed to partnering with them. And guys, Silverback Steel Supplements are phenomenal. And you're going to be hearing a lot about them. You're going to be hearing a lot more about them very, very soon. I promise you that. Their pre-workout just launched recently, and I tried it for the first time earlier this week. I felt like an absolute animal. And I didn't feel like, listen, most pre-workouts, you feel like you want to rip your face off. I didn't feel that at all. I felt a little bit of that, right? But it wasn't too much. It wasn't too overwhelming. And I felt awesome. So highly recommend their pre-workout alone. But they have so many great products for sale right now, and you guys got to try it. So go ahead. I'm going to put the link below, but their website is silverbacksteelsups.com. Go ahead and check them out, guys. I'm telling you, you will not regret it, and your gains will thank you later. I promise you that, guys. All right, let's get this thing started with the first fight of the night. We got heavyweights going at it between the debuting Thomas Peterson and Jamal Pogue. Thomas Peterson is an absolute beast of a wrestler. He's a D1 wrestler out of North Dakota, and he had a pretty impressive showing in his Dana White Contender Series fight against former Ultimate Fighter alumni Chandler Cole. Totally dominated Chandler Cole, tossed him around like a rag doll, and ended up getting a submission win, I believe, in the first round. So he looks like he's got a lot of potential, but he's taking on a pretty tough opponent in Jamal Pogue. Jamal Pogue is... Listen, he's well-rounded. He's got, he's capable on the feet. He's capable on the ground. Decent wrestler, but I see Thomas Peterson living up to his nickname of the Train and totally running through this guy. He should take Jamal Pogue down at will, smother him with top control. This might go the distance. Jamal Pogue is pretty tough. He's a tough out. So I think Thomas Peterson by decision is probably what I'm leaning on, but I could see him getting the finish too. This guy is dangerous. Little one-dimensional, I will say that. I do think, if he fights somebody that's going to be able to defend his takedowns, defend his shot, he's going to have a tough time on the feet against some of the more elite strikers of that heavyweight division. But, having a solid wrestling background as a heavyweight is such a big deal these days because there's not a ton of them. There's not a ton of them out there. You know what I mean? Look at what Jailton Almeida is doing to these guys, just taking them down at will. I see Thomas Peterson having a lot of success in the UFC's heavyweight division, but he's going to need to develop his stand-up. He's going to need to develop, his grappling's pretty solid. He's got a good submission game, right? But he's got to develop the stand-up, so he's got a ways to go. But I think he's going to run through Jamal Pogue, so give me Thomas Peterson by unanimous decision. Next up, we've got Landon Quinones taking on the debuting Markel Medeiros. And Markel Medeiros is a pretty moderate favorite, slight favorite, I should say, in this matchup. And I got to be honest with you, I don't see that. I watched some film on this guy, and yeah, he's got some good striking. He's pretty good at managing his distance well, managing range. He's got some TKO finishes, some knockout wins on the regional scene. So he looks like he's got some potential, right? But I feel like Landon Quinones is coming into his own every single time we see him. He gets a little bit better. And he showed a lot of potential on that Ultimate Fighter show. He was on Conor McGregor's team. Unfortunately, his inexperience definitely showed on that tough series. But he impressed me in his fight against Nassourdine. I can't even pronounce this guy's name. Nassourdine Hopskarat. I am terrible with names, guys. Bear with me. But took that fight on short notice against a very, very tough opponent. And went the distance with him, showed a lot of heart, actually made that a competitive fight. So, man, I don't know. I'm leaning the underdog here. I'm going to take a shot on the dog. I think Landon Quinones, I'm going to take him by finish, too. I'm going to be bold here. I like Landon Quinones by TKO, by late TKO, third round TKO stoppage. That could be one of the worst picks of the night, but I got a gut feeling here, man. I like this kid. I think he's got some heart. And not to say, listen, I don't know much about Markel Medeiros other than the small bits of film that I've watched on him, and he does look good. He definitely looks like a solid prospect. But I'm taking the dog here, so give me Landon Quinones, third round TKO. All right, next fight on the card, we've got women's bantamweights going at it between Luana Carolina and Julia Stoliarenko. I cannot talk today, guys. Bear with me. It has been a long, busy week, but we're going to get through this. Julia's coming off a pretty quick submission win last time out at UFC London against Molly McCann, who is one of the, listen, Molly McCann has a lot of hype around her. Everybody loves her. She's tied with Patty the Baddie, right? And, has a pretty big name on social media, but let's call a spade a spade. Pretty overrated fighter. Outside of the flash knockout wins that she has, she's really not that good, and she has no ground game whatsoever. And Julia was able to expose that. Got the fight to the ground pretty quickly and lashed up the submission win in the first round to get that done. She's taken on Luana Carolina here, who is a pretty well-rounded fighter. She's coming off a pretty impressive decision win last time out against one of the highly touted prospects out of Russia, in Ivana Petrovic. Yeah, I got that name right. Look pretty good. Listen, her stand-up looked good. Takedown defense looks solid. She's got well-rounded skills, right? And I think that is going to give her the edge in this fight, even though she's a slight underdog. I'm going to take another chance at the dog here. Listen, Julia's better on the ground, don't get me wrong, and she does have a little bit of size in this matchup, so that could play a factor. So I understand why the odds makers are giving her that slight lean. I believe she's like plus 135, or excuse me, minus 135 right now, which is pretty, slight favorite odds there, right? I get it, because if she does get this to the ground, she's got a very good chance at locking up a submission, or just, dominating from the top position. But I think Luana Carolina is going to be able to stuff some of these takedowns. I think she's going to get the better of the striking exchanges. And even on the ground, I think Luana's capable enough to stay out of harm's way and maybe get some reversals, get back to her feet, and get the striking going again. So give me Luana Carolina by a split decision. But I'm not betting this one, and I don't recommend anybody puts this in their parlays or anything like that, because it really could go either way. But I'm taking the dog here. 200 dogs in a row. Give me Luana Carolina, split decision. All right, next fight on the card, another one that I'm probably going to butcher the name of one of these gentlemen, and that is Jung Yi Lee, the Korean Tiger, taking on Blake Bilder. Jung Yi Lee has some power in his hands, man. Listen, this guy is a high-volume striker with knockout power, and he's got technique to boot. Grappling's pretty solid too. He's capable on the ground, but he's known for that stand-up. He's known for just getting in guys' faces, picking them apart with the striking, and eventually putting them out. Taking on Blake Bilder, he's a pretty powerful grappler, but he's very inconsistent. He looked terrible last time out, dropping a decision to Kyle Nelson, Kyle Nelson's kind of got a career resurgence going on, so he's, I think he's kind of been underestimated for a number of years, and he's starting to piece some wins together. So might not be a ton of shame in losing to a guy like that, but Blake Builder did not look good. He has a path to victory here, and that is his grappling, that is his wrestling, but his striking is horrendous, and I just think I don't think he does a very good job at using his strikes to set up takedowns, and I think that's going to be his downfall here. I also think, from a mental perspective, I think there's something going on with this guy. I don't think he is. I don't think he's in that flow state that we talk about on this channel, right? That being able to kind of let go of the stress, let go of the result, and just flow. Just go out there and just, let your skill set speak for itself, right? Let go of the fear of losing and just fight. And his last fight against Kyle Nelson, man, he looked like a guy that was trying not to lose, rather than a fighter that was in that flow state trying to, let his skills speak for themselves and win that fight. Now, who knows if he's been working with a sports psychologist since then. I mean, listen, I talk about that all the time. That is a game changer. So if he's working with somebody like that, then maybe, he's putting those pieces together. But I gotta take the Korean Tiger here. I think we're gonna see a TKO finish. So give me Zhang Yi Lee by second round KO or TKO finish. All right, we are plowing through these prelims, guys. We're getting there. Next fight on the card, we've got Themba Gorimbo taking on Pete Rodriguez. If you guys remember, Themba Gorimbo is the fighter that Dwayne The Rock Johnson, surprised at his gym and bought an entire apartment for him because The Rock was, moved by his story. I mean, this is a guy, Themba Gorimbo came from nothing, was very, very poor, was living in his car, I think, or living in the gym. And he was just hustling and grinding, trying to make his dream a reality. And that resonated with The Rock because, listen, The Rock's whole thing was he had $7 in his pocket when he got released from the Canadian Football League in 1993, I believe. I think it was 93, early 90s. And, he understands that grind, right? And he hustled, he grinded, and he became the biggest star in professional wrestling and now the biggest star in the world, right? So pretty cool to see The Rock pay that forward to Themba Gorimbo. And Themba Gorimbo is a pretty damn good fighter. I mean, he has been looking like a pretty solid up-and-comer. He's got a very solid ground game. Striking looks pretty solid, too. He's a lanky guy, so he uses his reach very effectively. And he's got well-rounded skills. We've talked about that with a lot of these fighters on this card. You've got these men and women that train in mixed martial arts. They didn't specialize in one art versus the other. This is the modern day MMA fighter where everybody is good at everything. And Themba Gorimbo. But the thing about this guy too, I think he has something that you can't really teach, and that is passion, that is heart, and that is an unrelenting, burning desire to win. So I really like this guy a lot. He's taking on Pete Rodriguez, who listen, I just sang Themba Gorimbo's praises. I'm gonna put Pete Rodriguez down quite a bit here, and let me just first start out by saying I respect the guy for taking this fight on short notice. So props to him for that. But this is a guy in Pete Rodriguez who has had a history of failing to make weight, and I think that is one of the most unprofessional things that a fighter can do. Listen, I'm not a big fan on weight cutting myself. I think it is incredibly dangerous. For one, a lot of guys don't do it correctly. But at the same time, you are agreeing to fight at a certain weight class. You sign the dotted line. Be a professional, right? Be a professional. Make that weight. And I don't think Pete Rodriguez is very professional. And I don't think he's that good of a fighter. I mean, I got to be honest with you. I think he's got power in his hands. Listen, that's about it. He can get a KO finish. And he's a threat for that, right? He's always live for a knockout win. I don't think he's going to get it here. I see Themba Gorimbo outpointing him on the feet, right? He's going to get the better of the stand-up, and I think if it gets to the ground, that's where Themba is going to dominate this fight. So give me Themba Gorimbo. I like him by TKO finish by ground and pound. So I'm going to take Themba Gorimbo by, I'm going to say I'm going to say third round TKO finish. All right, flyweights are up next. We got Charles Energy Johnson taking on Azat Maxim. This is an interesting matchup. Azat Maxim had a lot of hype around him when he made his UFC debut a few months ago against Tyson Nam, and he looked good, but he didn't look like the world beater that everybody said he was. And, you could chalk that up to UFC jitters. You can chalk it up to a lot of things. But a lot of people were expecting him to come out and dominate Tyson Nam with his wrestling. And he did get his takedowns in. He did get his ground control going. But he struggled with a guy like Tyson Nam. And that's not a knock on Tyson Nam. That guy has been around forever, and he's a dangerous fighter. But I think people were expecting more out of this debut, right? So it'll be interesting to see how he does against Charles Johnson, who is also, Charles Johnson has been struggling lately. He's coming off of 3 consecutive losses, I think 3 consecutive decision losses. And, we talk about the mental game on this channel. Charles Johnson he's struggling mentally. You make no mistake about it. This guy is frustrated for a number of reasons. And one of the things he's frustrated about is he's stuck on the UFC Apex cards. Like, all of his fights, except for one of them, have been on these UFC Apex cards with no crowd, and he's not able to get his family to come to the fights because the tickets are like ridiculously expensive. So he vented about that in an interview recently, and in that interview, you could just tell this guy's frustrated with his current situation. He wants to be on these big cards. He wants to get these pay-per-view fights, right, and be able to fight in front of his family. But you got to win. You know what I mean? You got to win, and he's on a 3-fight skid. This guy has potential, though, man. I'm a big fan of Charles Johnson's style. He's got really good footwork. He's like I said with Themba Gorimbo, like, he's a lanky guy. Like, he's got a good jab, bounces around quite a bit. But my problem with Charles Johnson, and from a perspective of a guy that has bet on Charles Johnson before, I get frustrated with this guy because he has no sense of urgency when he needs to have a sense of urgency. And he is just one of those guys that will kind of dance around, like throw that jab out there, dance around, and gets frustrated when he loses these decisions. If he would have just pushed the pace, if he would have just fought with a sense of urgency, like his ass is on fire, he might not be on a 3-fight losing streak right now. He does struggle with wrestlers. He does struggle with guys that are able to take him down, put him on his back, and control him. You saw that with Cody Durden. You saw that last time out against, and I'm forgetting off the top of my head who he fought, but it was another wrestler that was able to get the ground control going. So I got to take Azat Maxim here. I think we're going to see a much better performance and better showing from him than in his debut with Tyson Nam. I think he's going to get the takedowns. I think he's going to get the ground control going. And I like him to win this fight by a unanimous decision. But Charles Johnson, if he is able to get inside of his mind, get out of his mind, let go of all of this frustration, let go of all this, these thoughts of, I'm stuck on the UFC Apex card. I'm stuck in my current situation. I'm stuck on this losing skid, and they're all close fights, and I should have a better record. If he lets go of all of that and gets into that flow state, right, and stuffs the takedowns of Azat Maxim, he can win this fight standing up, no doubt about it. He is the better striker. So let's see if Charles Johnson can get that going. But if not, listen, I got to go with Azat. I got to go with the Kazakhstan fighter to get this one done. So give me Azat Maxim, unanimous decision. All right, the last fight on the prelims before we move over to the main card, we've got Meatball Molly McCann taking on Diana Delbita in a rematch from a fight that took place a number of years ago, where Molly McCann ended up getting a decision win over Diana Delbita. I said it earlier, Molly McCann is one of the most overrated fighters on the roster, and I know that might be harsh to say, but I'm just speaking from the perspective of truth. She does, when she wins fights, she looks great. She looks like an absolute killer. She's got a couple of spinning elbow knockout wins, which looks cool, and it's very, very impressive. Hard to do that, right? So all the credit in the world. When she wins these fights, she looks great. Problem is, when she fights anybody that has, like I said, any level of ground game, she's losing these fights. She's getting submitted. Diana Delbita is not really known for her ground game, though. She's decent on the ground, but she's more of a striker. So in this fight, you have Molly McCann, who is a pretty moderate favorite. I think the odds have her at like minus 220 right now. And I can see why, because she won the first fight. She's fighting a girl, again, not much of a threat to take her down and submit her. So I get why the odds are leaning towards Molly McCann, but I'm going to go with the underdog here. And listen, people might think I have like a vendetta against Molly McCann here. I really don't. I actually like her. I like her style. I just don't think she's that good. And I think Diana Delbita has gotten a lot better since the first time they fought. Yes, she's coming off that lopsided decision loss to Carolina Kowalkiewicz last time out. No shame in that. I mean, Carolina is one of the perennial contenders in the division. I mean, yes, she's a little older, and she was, for a while there were some concerns about her maybe being on the tail end of her career. But I think lately she's kind of gotten her career back on track. So I don't really give much shame in losing a decision to her. I think that Diana has improved tremendously, particularly with experience. You get more experience, your fight IQ is going to improve. And to me, that's the biggest thing. It's fight IQ and then it's experience. Molly McCann is going to come out like a bat out of hell because she wants a knockout win. She is embarrassed after the loss to Julia Stoller. Again with this shit. Julia Stolyarenko. I'm just going to say Julia S. moving forward. God help me. And, she's embarrassed from that. She was the co-main event in her home country in front of her home crowd fans in London, England. And she was the co-main event. She came up short. Not only did she come up short, but she didn't get to showcase really much of anything in that fight. So you have to imagine she's coming in hot in this fight. She's coming in looking for the KO. And that could work to her advantage or it could work to her disadvantage because she does have power and she does have the capability to, if she bum rushes Diana, maybe she clips her. Maybe she catches her with something. So I do see that potential. But maybe she comes in a little too aggressive. Diana's able to pick her apart from the outside, get her striking going, and maybe get, the better of the exchanges en route to a decision win. I'm leaning on that. I'm going to take a shot here. A shot on another underdog on this card. I've been picking a lot of them. So this could be dangerous for me because usually when I go with the dogs, sometimes it doesn't work out. But I'm taking another one here. I like Diana Delbita. Give me unanimous decision or even a split decision win for the Warrior Princess. All right, we've made it to the main card, and we're kicking things off between Gilbert Urbina and Charles Chuck Buffalo Radke. What a nickname. Listen, man, I don't have much good to say about Charles Radke. I thought he looked like shit against Blood Diamond. I understood the game plan. I mean, obviously, you're fighting a one-dimensional kickboxer in Blood Diamond, so you want to take away his biggest strength and utilize Charles Radke's biggest strength, which is his wrestling. So totally understood the game plan. He looked like garbage. He was barely able to get by Blood Diamond, who is a terrible fighter. I mean, he's an incredibly one-dimensional kickboxer and barely a good one at that, if I'm being real with you guys. So was not impressed with Charles Radke, and then he gets on the microphone after, and he's, I won't even go there with what he said. But, you can chalk that up to the heat of the moment. Obviously, he was frustrated. It was his UFC debut. He wasn't able to really showcase his skills in a positive light, and the crowd was booing him. And so he allowed that to get the better of him. He apologized after, and I give him a lot of respect for that. But that right there showed me something, because if he's that easily triggered by the fans booing him, I mean, you're not going to get that far in the sport. The crowd's going to boo you. You know what I mean? I mean, MMA fans can be very bloodthirsty, especially when you are a you're a wrestle heavy fighter that relies on takedowns and ground control. And the thing about Charles Radtke is normally he doesn't, even though he's a pretty good wrestler, he usually is in exciting fights. I've seen his regional fights, and he goes out there and stands and bangs for the most part. He just didn't want to do that against Blood Diamond, because he didn't want to give this guy any chance to, get his biggest asset going, which is his kickboxing. He played it safe and got the win in his UFC debut, so you can't necessarily fault him for that. It's just the way he was so triggered by the reaction of the fans to say what he said on the microphone afterwards. So that leads me to think he's got some weaknesses mentally going on upstairs. Fighting a guy in Gilbert Urbina who's coming off a pretty impressive TKO win last time out. Gilbert Urbina is a very good striker. He's one of these guys that's good everywhere, right? We talked about that with a lot of these fighters on this card. But particularly with his striking is where Gilbert Urbina excels. This has potential to be a very fun fight. It might even be a sleeper for fight of the night. I got to be honest with you. Even though I don't think Charles Radtke is that good, I don't think he's a UFC level fighter, he might prove me wrong here. And he might have a showing here where you see something. You see some potential. Or what I think is most likely going to happen, I see Gilbert Urbina beating the absolute living shit out of this guy. And if I'm being totally honest, I got Gilbert Urbina all day. I think he's the better striker. Yes, Charles Radtke is a pretty good wrestler, but I don't think, is he going to get some takedowns? Maybe, but I don't think he's going to do much with them. I think Urbina is going to get back to his feet or get into a, scramble into a more dominant position on the ground. I think Gilbert Urbina gets this done all day, so give me Gilbert Urbina. I'm going to take him by, I'm going to say first round TKO finish or knockout finish for Gilbert Urbina. All right, if you guys thought that I butchered some names on this card so far, you've seen nothing yet. So the next fight on this card, you got Aliaskhab Khizriev taking on Makhmed Muradov. I didn't do too bad with that. Thought I was going to do way worse. Khizriev is coming in here making his UFC debut. He is undefeated. I think he's like 11-0 or 14-0, something like that. Very good wrestler, very good takedowns. Has fought bums. Let's be honest, has fought nothing but bums. So while I understand why the odds makers have him as a slight favorite in this matchup, I would proceed with caution, especially against a guy like Muradov who has UFC level experience already, has fought some tough guys, and has some thunder in his hands. When I was originally making my picks, writing down my picks on a piece of paper before getting ready to do this video, I had Khizriev by decision. That was my pick. And then I watched Jacob Lyons from We Want Picks. Shout out to those guys, by the way. They're the best in this game. I got to give credit where credit is due. Jacob and Angelo are the best at breaking down fights, giving you the betting perspective, and the rest of us are just trying to catch up to them. Let's be totally honest there, right? And Jacob does this thing where every week he has his lock of the week, where he picks an underdog that he has 100% confidence in to get a win. And he usually does pretty well. Listen, it's a risky business, right? You're picking an underdog. That alone is risky, but he is way more successful at it, I think, than anybody else. And he's picking Makhmed Muradov as his lock of the week this week. So that got me thinking. And I started watching some more film of Muradov, watching some of his recent performances and refamiliarizing myself with him. And I think I'm flipping the pick. I'm going to take Muradov. I think he is going to lose the first round. I think Khizriev is going to get the takedowns. He's going to get ground control. It's going to look like he's dominating this fight. I think what's going to happen here is Khizriev is going to start to gas. He's going to start to slow down. Muradov is going to keep coming after him. He's going to keep pressuring him. And eventually, he's going to clip him. He's going to put him out. And he's going to knock him out, I'm going to say second or third round. So give me Muradov by second round KO. That's my pick, my official pick. Moving up this card, we got women's flyweights going at it. Natalia Silva taking on Viviane Araújo. I am a big fan of Natalia Silva. This girl has looked absolutely outstanding since debuting in the UFC. Slick striking, phenomenal killer instinct. Like when she gets in these situations where she smells blood, she goes for that kill, and she is just relentless. But she's not over aggressive. She's also very technical. And we saw that last time out against Andrea Lee, who is a very tough opponent, very good kickboxer. Natalia Silva picked her apart. Is going to be fighting for a world title very, very soon. Taking on Viviane Araújo, who is, in my opinion, one of the most underrated girls in this division. She does not get much credit. She does not get much recognition. Her name is not really thrown out there a lot in conversations when we're talking about, the top flyweights, right? And I think she should be to a certain extent. I think she's better than people are giving her credit for. Coming off a pretty good decision win last time out against Jennifer Maia. You can't look past Viviane Araújo. I think she is one of these underdogs on this card. I'm not picking her. Let me just flat out say that. I'm going with Natalia Silva. But Viviane Araújo is an underdog on this card that could potentially be the parlay buster. Because I think a lot of people are going to have Natalia Silva in their parlays, myself included. I'm going to have her in a few. Because, why not? But I would proceed with some caution with that, because I would not be that surprised if Vivian was able to grind this one out, to outpoint her just barely and get that close, split decision win against her. I could see that happening. But my pick is Natalia. I think Natalia she's a much better striker. I think she's on the rise. I think she is a couple fights away from